Such heart, such desire, and
6 times this season, Alexandra Eala has stepped onto a court against a top 10 opponent, and 6 times she has walked off it as the winner. The latest name added to that list is Elina Svitolina, beaten for the second time in just over a month by the exact same scoreline both times. But the theory that has carried Eala through this run the idea that she does not need power to win. Only time is about to face the hardest version of itself yet. At the 2026 Mubadala DC Open in Washington, D.C., Alex Eala defeated world No. 10 Elina Svitolina 6-3, 6-4 in the quarterfinals to reach the semifinals of the tournament. It was Eala's second consecutive win over Svitolina, following an identical 6-3, 6-4 result against her in the quarterfinals of the Berlin Tennis Open in June. The two scorelines, produced against the same opponent on 2 different surfaces, point to the same mechanism at work both times. In the DC Open quarterfinal, both players traded breaks of serve through the opening 5 games before Eala finally held for a 4-2 lead. She went on to break Svitolina's serve a total of 6 times across the match, repeatedly denying the Ukrainian veteran the rhythm her powerful serve is built to establish. In the second set, Eala found herself down 1-3, facing exactly the kind of deficit that has derailed other players against Svitolina's counter-punching game. She did not panic. She won 4 of the next 5 games to close out the set and the match, extending a pattern that has now shown up in back-to-back meetings: fall behind, absorb it, and come back without paying any emotional interest on the deficit. The quarterfinal also extended Eala's run in the tournament to a 3rd semi-final appearance of the season, following earlier runs to the Final 4 at the WTA 250 Asby Classic in January and the WTA 500 Berlin Open in June. Getting to this stage in Washington required navigating a far tougher path than the seeding suggested. Eala entered the tournament unseeded, and along the way she upset former world No. 2 and Paris Olympic gold medalist Zheng Qinwen in the opening round before dethroning defending DC Open champion Leylah Fernandez in the round of 16. By the time she walked out to face Svitolina in the quarterfinal, she was the only semi-finalist in the draw who had not entered the tournament among the top 4 seeds. Asked afterward about her upcoming opponent, Eala kept her answer measured. "She's such an accomplished player, and I think she's made waves on and off the tennis court for so many reasons," she said. "There's so much respect for her for that, and you know I'm really excited." It is a brief, careful response, and notably, it was not about Svitolina at all. It was about the player standing on the other side of the draw. 2 matches against the same opponent with the same result could be dismissed as a coincidence. A third data point, arriving on a different surface against the same player, is harder to wave away. Eala has now recorded her 6th win over a top 10 opponent in 2026, a tally that places her among the WTA Tour's most productive giant killers this season. The pattern behind those wins is not about hitting harder than the players across the net. It is about taking away the split second those players need to reset between shots, and refusing to let a scoreboard deficit change how she plays the next point. Against Svitolina, whose game depends on dictating rhythm and pace from the baseline, that formula has now worked twice in near identical fashion. For anyone new to this run, the mechanism is worth restating quickly. Eala's game is built on taking the ball early, cutting into her opponent's preparation time before they can fully load into their preferred shot. Against a player like Svitolina, who thrives on rhythm and dictating the tempo of a rally, that stolen half-second becomes the difference between a comfortable strike and a rushed one. Layered on top of that is the second piece of the mechanism when Eala falls behind on the scoreboard. Nothing changes in her execution. There is no visible tightening, no rush of unforced errors, no emotional tax paid on the deficit. Put those 2 elements together, and a clearer way to frame it emerges. Eala's game seems to work best against opponents who need time to operate. Svitolina needs that time. The next opponent in front of her does not. There is a reason this mechanism keeps producing the same kind of result against the same kind of opponent. Rhythm players like Svitolina are built around a repeatable routine, the same preparation, the same load into the shot, the same tempo from one ball to the next. Take away the half second she uses to set that routine, and the whole system that makes her dangerous starts to break down before it ever gets going. That is what happened across both matches against Eala this season, in Berlin and now in Washington, on two different surfaces against a version of Svitolina that had just come off tournament wins in Rome and Auckland this year. The surface changed, the scoreline did not. That opponent is Naomi Osaka, the third seed in Washington, who advanced to the semi-final earlier the same day. Osaka is a four-time Grand Slam champion and a former world No. 1, currently ranked No. 13 on the WTA Tour. Where Svitolina is a rhythm player who needs time to build a rally, Osaka represents something closer to the structural opposite. Her game is built around ending points fast, a heavy first serve, followed by 2 or 3 aggressive strikes off the forehand, designed to finish an exchange before it ever develops into a prolonged rally. Osaka's route to the semi-final was not straightforward. In the round of 16, she took an early 4-1 lead against American wildcard Ashlyn Kruger before Kruger called for a medical timeout to treat discomfort in her right foot. Kruger continued, visibly hampered, as Osaka closed out the first set 6-3 and pushed ahead 3-1 in the second, at which point Kruger retired with a right ankle injury after 53 minutes on court. Osaka later said she was surprised Kruger had managed to keep playing at all, calling the injury serious and wishing her a swift recovery. The quarterfinal against Italy's Elisabetta Cocciaretto was a different kind of test entirely. Cocciaretto had already produced one of the tournament's biggest upsets by eliminating 8th-seeded American Emma Navarro, and she carried that form into her match against Osaka, taking the first set 4-6. Osaka regrouped to win the next two, closing out the match 4-6, 6-4, 6-3 to reach the semi-final. Afterward, she did not describe it as a match won on the strength of her tennis. Overall, this match was really tough, and it felt more like a mental match than an actual tennis match. She said in her post-match press conference, "I don't feel like I played that well, but it was more fighting through every point. It is not the description of a player who dominated her way into the Final Four. It is the description of someone who found a way to survive it, which, against an opponent built to deny rhythm rather than provide it, may matter more than the manner of the win. The result also builds on a stretch of form that has included a run to the final in Bad Homburg and a quarter-final appearance at Wimbledon earlier in the season, suggesting the wobble against Cocciaretto was more an aberration than a trend. That sets up the central tension heading into the semi-final. Svitolina needed time to operate, and Eala took it away from her twice. Osaka does not need time in the same way. Her game is engineered to deny an opponent the chance to ever settle into a rally in the first place, closing points out before the kind of patient, rhythm-based tennis that undid Svitolina ever has a chance to develop. There is another factor that separates this matchup from everything Eala has faced in this DC Open run. There is no history between them. Eala and Osaka have never played each other at any level on the WTA Tour. That stands in contrast to almost every other opponent Eala has faced this fortnight. Against Leylah Fernandez, there was a recent and painful data point to draw from. Fernandez had beaten Eala in straight sets, 6-1, 6-4, at the Stuttgart Open in April, a match in which Eala had clawed back from a 5-2 deficit in the second set before ultimately falling short. That loss meant Eala walked into her round of 16 meeting with Fernandez in Washington, carrying a clear recent memory of exactly how dangerous her opponent could be, and precisely what needed to be different this time. Against Svitolina, there were two prior meetings, both producing the same scoreline and reinforcing the same blueprint. Against Osaka, there is nothing. No prior match, no shared history, no reliable pattern either player can lean on heading into Saturday. It marks the first genuine unknown of Eala's run through this tournament. Every previous opponent came with some kind of readable blueprint, built from past meetings or recent form. This one does not. That absence of history raises a real tactical question. Eala's early ball striking approach has worked because her opponents have needed time to operate. and because her own error rate has stayed low even against players capable of hitting through her. Whether that same formula holds up against a bigger, flatter, faster serve than anything Svitolina produced is genuinely uncertain. The early timing approach carries little margin for error. By design, it depends on meeting the ball just after it leaves the racket, with almost no room to recover if the timing is off. Against elite defenders, that has not been a problem. Whether it remains a viable approach against a four-time major champion whose game is engineered around power and short points is an open question, not a settled one. If there is a variable working in Eala's favor regardless of the tactical picture, it may be the same one that carried her back from 1-3 down against Svitolina. Across this run, falling behind has not visibly affected her level. Even if Osaka's power produces an early lead, historically, that kind of deficit has not appeared to cost Eala anything emotionally. Whether that composure is enough to offset a fundamentally different style of opponent is something that can only be answered on court. This is not a section built to promise an outcome. It is a genuine puzzle, and it deserves to be treated as one heading into Saturday's semi-final. The stakes extend beyond the result of a single match. The WTA's ranking cutoff for US Open seeding reportedly falls around August 24, meaning results at this stage of the season carry direct weight on how Eala's draw in New York could take shape heading into the year's final Grand Slam. She is currently ranked No. 28 in the world and stands to move as high as No. 25 when rankings update on Monday, continuing a trajectory that has carried her toward the edge of the world's top 25 this season. A run to the final in Washington or even the win over Osaka alone would push that number further, potentially altering who she could face in the early rounds in New York. There is also the cultural dimension that has followed her run through this tournament and, really, through this entire season. Eala has become one of the central storylines of the WTA calendar for the Filipino diaspora, with fans across the United States, Canada, and the Philippines following her results in real time. And a deep run in the American capital carries a different kind of weight for a community that has embraced her as a symbol of Filipino tennis reaching the tour's upper level. It is a storyline worth acknowledging without overstating it. The tennis itself, not the narrative around it, is what has carried her this far. On the other side of the draw, the other semi-final will see top seed Jessica Pegula face Diana Schneider for a place in the final, a matchup that was already set before Eala and Svitolina took the court. It is worth noting as context for how the rest of the tournament will unfold, even as the spotlight in Washington remains fixed on the Eala-Osaka meeting. The question posed at the start of this story remains unanswered. Does a game built on stealing time survive contact with an opponent who is built to deny that time before it can ever be taken? Svitolina needed the clock, and twice Eala took it from her. Osaka does not operate on the same clock at all. Whether that difference is enough to end the run, or whether Eala's composure under pressure proves durable against an entirely different kind of threat, will be decided on court in Washington the moment that result is in. The breakdown of exactly how it happened will follow, so if you want to see it before everyone else does, make sure you are subscribed and ready for it.